So welcome everyone to our third webinar of the This Girl Can in Hearts series. It is on We Are Undefeatable around long-term health conditions, and it's been hosted by the Hearts on Partnership. We are delighted to be joined by Gail Curry from Age UK to talk to us tonight. We Are Undefeatable is a movement supporting people with a range of long-term health conditions, and it was developed by 15 leading health and social care charities, backed by experts, insight and significant national lottery funding from Sport England. The webinar tonight is going to be hosted by Gail Curry from the Richmond Group of Charities, and this is the group of health and care charities whose partnership started the campaign. Gail's going to give us more insight and detail to the background of the campaign and share information about how you can get involved as a professional, a group or an individual. The webinar will have a general focus on women and girls because it is part of our This Girl Can in Hearts project campaign for 2022 that focuses on women and girls, but the content will be appropriate to generalise to all people living with long-term health conditions and is open to everyone. So I will hand over to Gail.
Okay, so I think that was my cue. I lost you a little bit at the end there. Right, thank you very much for having me. I'm going to share my screen. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Let me just do this. Okay, hopefully this is going to work. Okay, I can see it. Hopefully you can as well. Wonderful. So today I'm here to talk to you about We Are Undefeatable, which you've already heard is a campaign which was developed by a collaborative of 15 health and care charities. It was 16 before Asthma UK and British Lung Foundation merged, and it was funded by Sport England and National Lottery. We Are Undefeatable is aimed at people living with long-term health conditions to motivate, encourage and support them to be more physically active. Now, before I go on to introduce myself and explain the partnership and the campaign in more detail, I want to show you one of We Are Undefeatable's inspiring stories. So bear with me, hopefully this will work too. It's trying.
When I started to think about going back to exercise after my surgery, it was a bit difficult to know what to do, but I'd made up a series of small movements. I've taken a bit from yoga, a bit from Tai Chi and a bit from just stretching. It just really helps with the tightness around my scars doing this. I have a diagnosis of invasive lobular breast cancer. When I first got back in the water, I was really anxious that I'd be swimming and the scar would open and my implants would go floating off up the swimming pool. And then I got this ridiculously floral swimming hat. I probably look totally ridiculous. It's just part of the whole thing. My sister won't come swimming with me. She's too embarrassed, so she'll kind of sit and watch, probably fall asleep actually. It's really nice to have someone that close that you can hang out with and that really is supportive like that. Yeah, she's really dragged me through this.
Hopefully you managed to see that okay. So my name's Gail and I'm a project manager at the Richmond Group of Charities within the Physical Activity and Health programme, which is called Movement for All. The Richmond Group is a membership organisation made up of 12 of the leading health and care charities that aims to help people with long-term conditions get access to the care and support they need when they need it, wherever they live in England. Within our physical activity work, we also work with Mind, MS Society, Parkinson's UK and Sport England to achieve shared outcomes around physical activity. And it was this partnership that developed the award-winning We Are Undefeatable campaign, which started in 2019 and is still going strong. So together we want to change the narrative about what it means to be active and begin to change the behaviour of inactive people living with multiple long-term conditions. Now, just to give you a heads up, there's quite a lot of information and statistics on these slides, so I'm going to try and do my best to break it up with videos and some questions as we go along. So do please put any of your questions in the chat, and hopefully I'll be able to answer them at the end. So I'll start with a bit of background about what Movement for All has achieved over the last 5 years or so. We've developed a community of practice with our charity partners in Sport England, in which we share our learning, we provide peer support, network for each other, and it helps us to tackle common challenges as a collective. The charities have also delivered a number of individual insight and intervention projects funded by Sport England. You can find out more about those on the Richmond Group website. You can also find the evaluation that we conducted, which has allowed us to synthesize all the insight from the projects to understand any patterns and themes. That report is on the website, and if you're interested in embedding physical activity into your organisation, or if you work in collaboration and want some good practice tips about running and evaluating physical activity programmes, then have a look at that. We've also created a set of physical activity videos and a DVD aimed at people living with long-term conditions. That's called Make Your Move. This was developed when we spotted that people were feeling overwhelmed during lockdown and unable to find suitable content for them. And it helped us also to provide an offer for people who were digitally excluded, because we've worked with partners such as yourselves to distribute more than 4,000 copies of the DVD, and we've also got it in GLL libraries for loan as well. We've also recently developed a resource pack which has got a lot of information and case study examples and links to useful resources to help people in the sports and physical activity sector, to help social prescribers, health professionals, primary care networks, etc., to have all the relevant information about multiple conditions and physical activity at their fingertips. I'll be sharing links to that later. And of course, we are Undefeatable, that aims to change how we think about physical activity and encourage people with long-term conditions to move more. So I will go into the campaign in more detail, but I want to start with talking about some of the challenges. Starting first of all, the question. Hopefully I can access the chat to see if you can answer this question. What percentage of people do you think live with a long-term condition? If you can put your answer in the chat.
Yeah, and if you can't, I can feed back.
No, it's okay. I can see it. It's good. It's good. Yeah. Yeah, some answers coming in. That's great. Yeah. Okay, so I can see some correct answers there. The answer is 43%. So why is that percentage important, and why do we collaborate around physical activity? Because there's a deep inequality, as I'm sure you know, within physical activity, that people with long-term conditions, and especially multiple conditions, are more likely to be inactive and do no physical activity than people without a long-term condition. So they're twice as likely to be inactive. Inactivity increases the more conditions someone has, and women are less likely to be active than men with a condition as well. This data is all from Sport England Active Lives data, which is very freely available. So that's our challenge. Why does addressing inactivity matter? Well, whatever role you're in, you're likely to be coming in contact with people with long-term conditions, and you have opportunities to help support them and their health and well-being. And the reason that we need to do that, and why it matters obviously, is because inactivity is a leading cause of mortality and is responsible for 1 in 6 deaths in the UK. And we also know it can help prevent up to 40% of long-term conditions, including diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. And that's why it's been referred to as a wonder drug by the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges. Why do we address inactivity for people with long-term conditions? Because physical inactivity has a significant impact on this audience and on the system. So us addressing this presents an opportunity to shift that dial on inequality. Physical activity can help improve quality of life, manage stress, aid sleep, and reduce social isolation, as well as managing the conditions that I mentioned before. There are also billions of pounds to be saved in healthcare from a more active society. And I heard on a presentation today, in fact, that a pound spent on helping people be more active recoups £4 in social value. So it's definitely something we should be doing. Here I'm showing you some stats on people living with more than one long-term condition, which I'm referring to as multiple conditions. And the key stats here, as you can see, are 24% of people living in England are experiencing 2 or more conditions, and 8% are living with 4 or more. And you can see it's, you know, several millions of people. This is actually a slightly different number from the one I've already told you, 43%, which also highlights the difficulty in getting reliable data sometimes. With multiple conditions, this is only going to keep becoming more of a challenge as the prevalence of these increase. 2/3 of people aged over 65 are expected to be living with 2 or more conditions by the year 2035. And of those, 1 in 3 will have a mental illness, for example, dementia or depression. And women, some research suggests, are more likely to have multiple conditions, around 6% more, and the biggest difference there is found in middle age. The case studies in the Richmond Group's report, which is called Just One Thing After Another, shows that many people with multiple conditions are in chronic pain or they suffer from reduced mobility, both of which can affect day-to-day experiences. Their social network might have shrunk, they may be unhappy, isolated, or feel that they lack purpose. And it can feel as though the conditions, that's the effects of the conditions and the effort of managing them, have taken over much of their lives. And we know that there are higher rates of chronic pain in women. Depression is also a common condition in women, and the combination of a mental and physical condition affects more women too. We also know that women often bear the brunt of the domestic burden, and multiple conditions can mean multiple appointments, which can be costly, time-consuming, difficult to manage around work and family commitments. So the energy, the motivation, the time to fit in physical activity is really a key issue. Another question, and I'm sure you'll all know the answer to this as well. How are inactive people defined in terms of minutes of activity? So are they defined as doing less than 10 minutes per day, or less than 150 per week, or less than 30 per week? What do you think is the answer to that one? I can see some answers coming in. Okay, yeah, good. Thank you for putting in your answers. I'm glad that you're still with me. Okay, so the answer here is less than 30 minutes per week. So the 150 minutes per week is actually the recommendation, as I'll mention in a second. Inactive people are defined as doing less than 30 minutes of physical activity a week. And if you break that down in an average over the course of the week, that's 4¼ minutes per day. So, you know, that's less than 5 minutes per day, basically, if you look at it like that. And just to remind you that people with long-term conditions are twice as likely to be that inactive than someone without. So what do we mean by physical activity? I don't need to tell you this really, but it's any bodily movement produced by our skeletal muscles that requires energy. And as I said, the Chief Medical Officer guidelines recommend 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity activity and minimising sedentary time. But there is no minimum amount required to achieve a health benefit. And the greatest gains in health are to be had by the least active people, increasing their activity levels, even by small amounts. And I think that's an incredible thing to know. I didn't know that until I started working in this role. I think that's incredible. It means that therefore physical activity is any movement that works for that individual and it's going to be beneficial. Okay, this may be my last question, I'm not sure. So we're going to talk about barriers for a bit. What do you think is the biggest barrier to physical activity for people with long-term conditions? Is it time, confidence, or fear of worsening the condition? Thank you very much for being interactive with me. It's great to see the answers coming. So the answer to this really is that the condition-related barriers are by far the most prominent. So out of those, it's the fear of the condition getting worse. That's what's stopping people from being active. That's what's stopping people from doing something that will actually should help them, is the fear that it will get worse. We have some slides here from the research that we conduct as a campaign. And this one demonstrates the considerable barriers which often prevent people with long-term conditions to become and stay active. And you can see that condition comes out as the highest, followed by motivation and then confidence. And then obviously COVID-19 has added another layer as well. You can also see in the red box there that people living with multiple conditions, including depression and anxiety, are twice as likely to struggle with a low confidence and are more likely to cite all the barrier types. Throughout the development of the campaign of We Are Undefeatable, we've used the COM-B model to map the barriers faced by the audience so that we can develop the campaign and ensure it meets their needs. I also had a little look at the difference between men and women here. So COM-B, as I'm sure you know, stands for capability, opportunity, and motivation. And I've drawn out some stats here from our research. So this is people living with long-term conditions, the difference between men and women. The biggest gaps are for confidence and motivation. So women are more likely to say that motivation is a barrier and that confidence is a barrier. But women are also less likely to feel capable of being active and that there's less opportunity for them to be active and that being active is less enjoyable. So, you know, it really highlights that there's some work to do. What else do we know about people's barriers to being active? Well, so much traditional messaging around physical activity turns people off with long-term conditions. Many of them don't relate to sport and exercise as terms, or they don't like the idea of attending a traditional or structured class. It can be intimidating. So we need to reiterate that physical activity looks different for everyone, whether it's walking around the house, on the phone, or attending a virtual class, or going to a walking football session, or doing seated exercise by watching TV. It's about what suits that individual, but marketing and messages need to reflect that as well. People need to see themselves in the marketing. That's one reason that the campaign is successful. They need to see themselves in the coaches leading the classes and in the media in order to be able to identify and believe that it's achievable to make a change. And being bombarded with the homogenous images of athletic young people in Lycra isn't inspirational or aspirational for many people with long-term conditions, as it just further undermines their confidence and motivation. We also know that living with multiple conditions isn't easy, that motivation wavers, that conditions fluctuate, and the only reliable thing about getting and staying active is that it's not linear. People with long-term conditions have told us that they wish more people understood the barriers that they face, not just the typical barriers that affect everyone, such as time and money and transport, but the significant condition-related barriers that I mentioned, such as pain and fatigue, and those concerns about making it worse. The motivational issues themselves mean that a lot of people need support changing their behaviour and becoming and staying active. So it's not just a case of put on a class and we'll come. Are their needs being assessed? Is there peer support? Are there welcoming, relatable instructors and so on? Can they see themselves in that activity? Behaviour change is supported if inclusive and accessible physical activity is prioritised, and if the audience is consulted to find out how they can feel welcome and part of a facility or an activity. We know from our audience insight that the majority of people with long-term conditions want to be more active, 64%, and it's interesting that that figure actually rises for people living with more than one condition, especially when we know that the more conditions you have, the more likely it is that you're inactive and have lower confidence, but they want to be more active. That motivation does diminish with age, but what we found through some of our other insight, working with Age UK on their One Step at a Time report, is that the activity messages need to be nested in a broader motivation. So for older people anyway, so for example, the ability to stay independent for longer, or the ability to leave the house to socialise. So that's what they want to focus on. And it's an interesting direction that the campaign will take in 2022, which I'll talk about shortly. So what have we done as a group with We Are Undefeatable to try and address those barriers? Well, the campaign uses real life stories like the one I showed you earlier. Those people experience real conditions, more than one health condition, and the campaign is centred on those stories, those individuals who have found different ways to be active that suit them. Some of them care for others, some of them rely on their families and social networks to support them to be active. All of the messages have been tested and based on insight. We've tested the tone of voice and the messaging with people with multiple conditions throughout, using focus groups and surveys. The campaign was also developed in conjunction with behaviour change experts. So in summary, the campaign, We Are Undefeatable, has almost 30 inspirational case study stories. Our adverts have reached millions. We've gone into GP surgeries. We're a toolkit on the campaign resource centre. There were also 10 Sport England funded local activation area projects. We've got 1,500 supporters. We've had partnerships with Loose Women and Sunday Crunch on TV, and we've won 2 industry awards. Each campaign period, and there's around 3 periods per year, is contract. So we survey people with long-term conditions throughout. And we've also carried out quite a bit of qualitative research with people, especially during the pandemic, to keep in touch with them and help to shape iterations of the campaign as well. If you sign up to our webinars, you can hear more about that research, and I'll give you the details of that later. So the campaign's main aim is to champion a narrative that resonates with this audience. And these quotes demonstrate why the campaign is effective and why it would be fantastic to have your help in promoting it, specifically as a support tool. It resonates with people with long-term conditions and inspires them. The words that stand out for me here within these quotes are, whatever your health issues, simple things, togetherness, all people. So we know that what we're doing is hitting the right spot. How does that resonate with the audience? Well, our research has told us that it's the importance of putting people with lived experience of a long-term condition at the centre of the storytelling, so that they can explain what it's like to live with a long-term condition in their own words and how they overcome barriers. And you can see on the screen there, I've got there's actually a link. So if we send the slides afterwards, you can link to, or you can have a look at the We Are Undefeatable YouTube channel to see those stories. They really are superb. And for partners like you, well, here are some of the communication tools that we use, things like our regular newsletters and webinars to update supporters on the progress of the campaign, and the research is all there as well, and we'll tell you about the impact. The Supporters Hub, which you can sign up to, all you need to do is create a password, has all kinds of resources that you can access, and I'll tell you a bit more about those as well. So as I said, it's so important when considering inclusivity in activities that the person is at the heart of it. It's vital that people relate so they can see that people like them to be active. That's why we've tried to reach such a diverse number of case studies with the campaign, so we can reach as many people, so we can try and show as many people in there as possible. The campaign does tend to resonate more with people who can see their condition. So we know, for example, that the last round of TV ads was resonated more with people who'd had breast cancer and cancer, but that's because Darlene was at the heart of it. But we know that it does reach other conditions as well, and people with all sorts of conditions will share their stories with us on social media, and it's great to see that. I think the charity factor is really important because people find trust in an established organisation like a charity, and it helps them understand that there's somewhere that they can go if they need condition-specific support. And many of our partners do have the capacity to speak to people about physical activity on their helplines, or they have information and resources on their websites. More than half of the people that we reach have said that the campaign has inspired them to be more active, but importantly made them think differently about physical activity in terms of what kind of thing counts. I think historically people may have thought that they had to go to a class or they had to do a run or something like that, but that, you know, because we're focusing very much on daily activities, people really identify with that, and half of them have actually taken a specific action to get more active. So this is really just a page of quotes to show more impact. This shows that we are helping to address those barriers to activity by making people feel seen, as well as providing reassurance that physical activity is safe and it can help manage their conditions instead of making them worse. We also know that the campaign actually helps to support our charity partners and our supporters. It acts as a prompt for change within their organisations to make physical activity more visible and to help to prioritise it within their organisations. 2/3 of them have said that it's a key priority. And we're also seeing the campaign now also being used as a tool. It's been more visible, and we hope that will continue. It's been included in the My Planned Care platform for people waiting for elective care. It's also included in the physical activity clinical champion training for healthcare professionals, and it's there as a tool for any organisation to use to promote the effectiveness and the importance and the safety of physical activity. Okay, I want to show you now a very unique case study featuring a woman who was in our 2020 TV ad. Hannah shares very personal information about her severe mental illness and how physical activity has helped manage this. And do take some time to look at the longer version of these case studies on the YouTube channel. You can do that without having to sign up to anything, but if you do sign up as a supporter, you can get any latest updates, and you can also access any videos and imagery to share and use to promote physical activity to the people that you work with long-term conditions in your area. So let me try and play this, hopefully it'll work.
I live with a mental health illness, mainly depression, and also self-harm. Living with these conditions, some days I almost feel as if I couldn't see the light of the next day. So recently I have taken up walking. It makes me feel so much better. It makes me feel fresh and rejuvenated. It's true when they say exercise releases endorphins, because it does. It's like a happy hormone. We've done some tennis and we actually really enjoyed that. You just feel like you could conquer the world after you've had a game of hour of tennis. also you feel like you're about to die, but you feel really good.
As I say, do take some time to look at the videos on YouTube. Some of them really are incredible. Oh.
I live with...
Okay. So what can you do to make a difference? Well, I'd like you to tell me some things in a little while, but whatever your background or role, how you can make small changes in what you do that might have far-reaching implications for others on their journey to being more active and improving their health and well-being. Well, have physical activity conversations if you're not already. If your role brings you into contact with people living with long-term conditions and you're not already working in physical activity, make sure it's part of your conversations about their care and self-management, whether you're in the care sector or not. You can signpost them to We're Undefeatable if they need inspiration and motivation. And champion physical activity as part of a holistic approach to self-management and change the way it gets talked about. If you're not confident in doing that, then do look at the resources available that can help you, such as the Richmond Group's resource packs. And as I said, I'll link to those shortly. And you can also consider your own activity needs. You know, the chances are that given that 43% of us have a long-term condition and also 25% of the NHS workforce have a long-term condition, that you might have personal experience that relates to much of what we talked about. So take a moment to consider your own self-care, especially if you live with a long-term condition, and look at the campaign for support and ideas about finding small ways to be active that work for you. There's always somebody who has a great idea that you've never thought of. And it could be that when you share your own positive experience, that the person you're speaking to will be more inspired to take action. And of course, if you're a provider, prioritise inclusivity. Take any opportunity to review the accessibility and inclusivity of your facilities, of your services. Invite people with long-term conditions to be part of that conversation and to help you make changes because it's what they want to do. Obviously, there's funding that you can access, such as the Together Fund from Sport England. And then there's lots of free resources like the UK Coaching Guide for working with people with long-term conditions, Alzheimer's Society Dementia-Friendly Guide for Facilities as well. And that is all linked to in our pack as well. We also heard from our audience about some of the things that can help support them to be active. And these are some ideas that you can see here, but we also know that the barriers can be complex and multifaceted. And we know that there are some people who have a variety of needs or desires that would not fit easily into one box. So a women-only session or a diabetes-only session, you know, some people need to be treated in a wider way. These are just some suggestions. The cost of living with a long-term condition means that we often hear that people would really value concessionary classes. And also 30% of people living with multiple conditions are under 65 and might have families to juggle. So the ability to be active with a family could be important. We also have some case studies on our YouTube channel from the likes of Kirklees, which was one of our activation areas. They did a lot of engagement with the South Asian community, so you can have a look at some examples there. And then there's other resources that you can access through the likes of Activity Alliance, Sport England, EMD UK, through the charity partners. And again, I'll link to those later. This quote at the top here by Amanda highlights the relatability points that I made earlier. People really want to be able to see someone like them. I did pop an example here about what a local activation area has done. This is Wirral. This was a very much a hands-on approach whereby ambassadors were recruited from within the target audience to support people with long-term conditions to be more active. And then there are other examples, I say, all on the YouTube channel, such as Somerset Sports and Activity Partnership. They worked with social prescribing, link workers, signposting people to local offerings, as well as handing out the Make Your Move DVD to people who wanted to be more active at home. If you want to know any more about the activation areas, I can send you some information on that. But as I say, have a look at the YouTube channel. And I would love to hear about any similar examples or anything else that you're doing. I'd love to hear about that, or what's happening in your area, because we can include that in future versions of our resource pack. So just a little bit of information here about how the campaign is developing right now. So up to this point, we have avoided being too prescriptive about what people should do and why, but our research has shown that people would value seeing more about why physical activity is important and what they can get out of it. We also know that some of the benefits of activity are intrinsic emotional motivations that can encourage people to get active and then maintain that, such as autonomy, belonging, and feeling capable. So the next phase of the campaign is about what other areas of their life could be positively impacted if they became more active. I cannot wait to see it myself. It's being developed at the minute, but it's focusing on how doing some types of physical activity can help other daily activities and individual goals. So it's about what matters to that person. Being active can help them reach a goal, however big or small. The impact on the person can be huge. It could help their independence or their ability to socialise and bring benefits list, visiting a new place, getting a good night's sleep, spending more time with friends. There's all sorts of things that people could get out of it. So please do look out for the next campaign period, which is coming in August to your televisions. Okay, so just to recap, debunking those myths about physical activity is important for us to be able to move forwards and see the change. So there are 5 things everyone needs to know for us to do this. We've gained these insights from our research, and several of our charity partners have undertaken similar projects. It all counts. Any physical activity is good according to the guidelines, and we need to change the way that we're talking about it to make that more explicit. We need to be talking about moving in a way that suits the individual, that promotes choice and flexibility. Being active doesn't need to be something we set aside 30 minutes for 5 times a week. We know that moving more, how and when you can, is the key message. I've already talked about the importance of achievability, relatability, and the unpredictable nature of living with a long-term condition. And also, physical activity is safe. We've heard from people that they're worried they'll make the condition worse, and it is sometimes still commonplace for the leisure sector to screen people for a condition and then send them to their GP for clearance. But we know from recent work by the Faculty of Sport and Exercise Medicine, who reviewed all the literature, a consensus amongst the experts was reached that physical activity is safe for most people with multiple conditions, and it should be and people should be encouraged to seek medical advice if their conditions are unstable or if they experience some red flag symptoms. But in the majority of cases, we should be reinforcing the message that there's greater risk in being sedentary than being active. So to get our resources, how do we take away what we've heard today and start to turn it into action? Well, first of all, please do have a look at the We Are Undefeatable website, register for the Supporters Hub and the mailing list to keep up to date on our tools and what's on there. And you can find out more about the physical activity work generally on the Richmond Group website, and you can see links to various insight reports from the charity partners. If it's helpful, you could share this recording, share the slides with your colleagues. And then we also have the Make Your Move DVDs, which I have to say have been really helpful for people. If you want actual hard copies of the DVDs, you can contact me, but they're also on YouTube as well. Some of the resources that you'll find here are quite practical things. So I've listed some here. So My Daily Undefeatable is a chatbot designed to check in with people. So it's a digital tool. It takes some basic information about what they want to achieve, and it's done by Facebook Messenger. We did undertake a small evaluation last year, I think it was, so I can send on a summary of that if you're interested. Also, the home games, which I've mentioned here, and I don't think there's time to show you the link, but initially it was set up as a PR initiative. It was set up around the Olympics last year, and to encourage people to take part in their own games at home using household objects, joining in with friends and family, because it was really about that social aspect. And it became such a rewarding experience for the people who took part. Absolutely, you must go and have a look at the home games video, because I actually had a look at it yesterday for the first time in a little while, and I did have a tear running down my cheek. It's incredible. And Team Undefeatable was set up in the first lockdown to help people feel connected. There's a summary video on YouTube there, so please do have a look at that. I don't know what will happen if I click on that link, so I'm going to avoid doing it because I don't want to lose you, but maybe we could show it at the end. There's a dance team video for Team Undefeatable, and it's just wonderful, it really is. And then we've got 5 in 5, which is a tool for people to do 5 moves in 5 minutes. We've got a leaflet, which is downloadable, called 15 Ways to Move at Home. And then there's our social media channels, and YouTube has a curated suite of activity videos as well. There are lots of videos out there, but we've specifically focused on the ones done by our charity partners and other trusted stakeholders as well. In our resource packs, you can also link to other really helpful resources. This is just a few that I picked out. So the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy, Stronger My Way, resources are fantastic, and they've got resources for healthcare professionals and the target audience. Mind have a fantastic physical activity and mental health toolkit, and the Activity Alliance have got a number of helpful things to help support facilities to be more inclusive to disabled people. So there's a lot out there, and as I say, you can get all those from our resource packs. So I just want to leave you with this final video of how that support can be so important, and the impact of a condition, not just on the person, but on their loved ones too.
I suffer from rheumatoid and osteoarthritis. For 5 years, I had been having knee injections to relieve the pain and allow me some measure of mobility, but then injections no longer helped. The mobility in my life had been affected so badly that I remember clearly to this day when my daughter said to me that, "Mom, after losing 2 aunts and seeing you not moving, I can't lose you too." Therefore, I was given 2 total knee replacements. I don't want to love nobody. After having a kick in the behind, as it were, I decided to start walking a half a mile at a time. Come on, Mum. I started to walk further and further, dropped to the canes and started walking faster and further each day. And that has literally transformed my life.
Fantastic. So just one final question. What will you do to support more people with long-term conditions to become and stay active? And I'm not going to put you on the spot. You do not have to answer that question now, but I want you to go away and think about that, and maybe you could come back to us later. If you want to put an answer in, that would be wonderful too. Okay, thank you very much. There are my details, our website. Please do get in touch. Thank you very much for having me to speak today. And if I can help in any other way, or if we can help with anything else to do with your work, please do not hesitate to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gail. That was really insightful, and we appreciate your time tonight. I think that was really good for food for thought at the end, and the 5 things in the recap take away, I think, definitely realistic and something that we can all promote and do. So thank you very much. I'm just going to get another slide up. My colleague Will, who works with Gail, and he was presenting at a conference today around some of the work that we are doing in Hertfordshire under the Live Longer Better in Hertfordshire banner. He couldn't get back in time for the webinar, so he's asked me to just share this one slide just to sort of follow on from Gail's presentation about the sort of national campaign, but also just to link in with what we're doing in Hertfordshire. So hopefully the tech works and you can all hear.
Hi everyone, my name is Will Slemmings and I'm the Strategic Lead for Health at the Heart Sports Partnership. I also lead on the Live Longer Better in Hertfordshire movement, of which this webinar is forming part of the annual delivery. I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking to you about Live Longer Better in Hertfordshire, so apologies to anyone that already knows my face and already knows the movement well. You just have to put up with me for another few minutes. I'm hoping there's a few people on the webinar that don't yet know the movement and might want to be involved. Before I go too far, I should apologise. I had plans to be speaking with you live at the webinar this evening, but unfortunately I had a bit of a diary mix-up, and I'm due in London. Well, I've been in London all day today by the time you watch this, presenting on Live Longer Better in Hertfordshire at the Y Sports conference, and unfortunately I wasn't going to be able to get back in time. So we're doing this as a recording, but please do feel free to get in touch should you have any questions following the webinar. So Live Longer Better in Hertfordshire is a movement, not a project in its traditional sense, and in that, I mean, it's intended to be a collective action. It's not got a defined sort of start, middle and end. It's not got a defined list of partners. We want it to be as many people as we can, many as organisations and different types of sectors involved that are interested in improving active ageing within Hertfordshire can come together under one common umbrella to work together. So you'll notice that there's no Heart Sports Partnerships logos on this. That's very intentional. We want this to be a neutral brand and a neutral, like I say, that umbrella movement for everyone to work on together and come together under a common mission of using physical, cognitive and emotional activity to encourage longer, healthier and happier lives for older adults in Hertfordshire. Within that, we have the aims of engaging older adults as well as those working closest to them, including professional and voluntary individuals, to improve the approaches to active ageing in Hertfordshire in 3 ways. So, as it says, firstly, by increasing collaboration. We know we've already got some really great offers in Hertfordshire, but lots of people are doing lots of things in silo, and the idea of the movement is to get people walking the same path together, because we know we're a stronger force if we sort of unite and tackle this head on together. Also looking at increasing learning and upskilling opportunities. So a lot of what Live Longer Better is about is providing learning events or learning courses and different tricks and tools of the trade that might be usable to improve active ageing in Hertfordshire. And ultimately all of this adding up to result in a change of culture, one of the sort of inevitable care system that you get to a certain age and you stop moving and you sink into your armchair and watch Countdown, to one of more enablement and, as the mission says, kind of encouraging those longer and healthier and happier lives through doing as much activity as possible. And the way we do that, like I say, it's not a project, so there's not a lot of physical delivery within the actual movement itself, but it's trying to encourage a lot more physical activity and physical delivery. The way we do that is by having the standalone website. So again, a neutral place for all partners to come together. It hosts the theory, the insights, the learning materials and the different bits of branding materials from the national programme that have been converted for the local activation of the campaign. There's also all the recordings from previous events. So as I mentioned, there's lots of different events to try and learn from different specialisms within Live Longer Better in Hertfordshire. And all the recordings from both the national events, which hosts kind of streams of not just national but international expertise presenting on active ageing topics, as well as our local Live Longer Better in Hertfordshire masterclass webinars, including this one, as well as kind of all the other ones that we've had this year already, which tend to focus on more local organisations or local campaigns and local insight and specialisms. Anyone that knows the Live Longer Better in Hertfordshire movement knows that the Ambassador Programme has been a long time coming. It is launching soon, I promise. Everything's in place now. We're just waiting for our new active ageing officer to be employed so that they can run the programme. But what that will be is an online learning platform of material that's been put together by Muir, that's Sir Muir Gray, who leads on the national version of this campaign. Movement, sorry, not a campaign, and it's essentially a download of his brain and some other leading professionals into a learning package which we've funded, so it'll be completely free to access, and then individuals that have taken the training will be able to become an ambassador for the programme, whether that's campaigning, kind of talking to other organisations or other individuals, or it might just be working with one older adult or one family member. It's also open to older adults themselves to become an ambassador, so lots of exciting opportunities coming there. You'll be able to stay up to date with developments of that from joining the mailing list. It's one of those that, so essentially I will email out once a month or so with the events that are coming up or the new opportunities that are coming out around active ageing, and if you want to join that mailing list, when these slides get circulated, you can click that hyperlink, or if you go onto the website that's at the top of the page there, livelongerbetterinhearts.co.uk, you can either scroll down the main the home page and there's a join the mailing list button, or on the contact page there's a join the revolution button that you can click there, and all your details will be filled in, and you'll get the emails from me as and when I send them out. And finally, we also know that funding is a big barrier to getting more activity and more support around active ageing in Hertfordshire. So we've enlisted the services of a professional bid writer, and put him in funds to write bids for organisations or groups that want to put some more active ageing activity on. So it might be a class, or it might be a health walk, or it might be a new course or learning opportunity, anything that's going to benefit active ageing and doing a bit more activity. Then we can talk about getting a professional bid written for your organisation to try and get some more funds in so you can do a bit more. And really that's it. Quite short and sweet, but if anyone wants to get involved, like I say, you can join the mailing list or you can get in touch. My contact details are on the website, but also they'll be on these slides when they come round. And hopefully this is a bit of an opportunity to take some of that learning, not just from this webinar, but all the different bits and pieces that are going on right now. We know coming out of COVID that this is a super important topic, and the deconditioning of our older adults we've never seen anything like it as what we're going through now. So now's the time. Please do come and join the movement, and we can get our older adult population in Hertfordshire moving as much as we can and living longer better.
Cool. So thank you very much for listening to that. I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm standing awkwardly to the side. Yeah, as Will said, that's sort of our offer for older adults and long-term health conditions in Hertfordshire, and we can definitely make sure that his information is shared in a follow-up email, as will Gail's information and links to the resources and the recording as well. So just to finish, I think I saw in the chat that my colleague Jane has put a survey into the chat. If you're able to just fill that in, that'd be really helpful for us, just in terms of some feedback and helping us continue to shape the webinar series. Yeah, we have some more webinars, so let me share one final screen. Sorry, they don't normally let me do the tech stuff for a reason. I can't find it. But we've got a couple of other webinars coming up. They are to do with healthy lifestyles and body image, which is the next one in the series. And then we also have one coming up. Apologies, I can't find it. I've got too many tabs open. Got it. Hopefully you can see it as well. So we've got the Healthy Lifestyles and Body Image on the 18th of July. That is in partnership between, we've got a lifestyle coach, mentoring coach, and we've also got Busybodies who are sort of nutritionists, sort of delivering that one for us on the 18th of July. And then on the 20th of July, so 2 in 1 week, we have Women in Leadership. So we are delighted to welcome Kate Dale from Sport England, who is going to be in conversation with Lisa Wainwright, MBE, who's the CEO of Sport and Rec Alliance. So that is going to kickstart some of our women leadership work. And again, they are free to attend just like this. So feel free to sign up, promote across your networks, the more the merrier.